Okay, I got 10:30 a.m. We'll start the meeting of public safety. Wendy, I'm sorry, Becky,
Sure. Mike Copine,
here.
Keen Hudson,
Present.
Katie White, Angie Shipper,
Here.
and Mike Pearson.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, would you care to have anything to say
Oh, yeah.
from the
Sorry.
public? Sure, go ahead.
My name is Cynthia Hatch. Call me Cindy. Closer. I was wondering if there was anything we could do in regards to the senior center here in Dixon, since its doors are closed and its services are not available to those who do not have the vaccination pass, I'll call it, the certificate of vaccination. I was wondering why they are still being funded when they aren't providing services. So if there's anything that we can do to persuade them to open their doors to everyone, that would be the best. But if they're not willing to do that, then I wonder why we are funding them. And that's all I have to say. Could we get that on the agenda? Is there something that this body can do about that?
So
Wendy,
this
go ahead.
particular committee, it's not under the umbrella of your committee, Mike, but it's something that, how about if we, if you leave me your contact information and I follow up with you about what might be the appropriate committee to address with that, all right?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Mr. Kitson. I know you're not public, but we respect you anyway. Okay, did everybody have a chance to read last month's minutes? And if so, are there any corrections or additions to be made? If not, they'll stand approved as read. Animal control, I don't see Terry, circuit clerk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to briefly update everybody on the class action lawsuit involving the Safety Act and the elimination of cash bail. The Supreme Court will be hearing oral arguments tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So we will know more after that. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Amy? Okay, if not, I don't see anybody on the judge's side. Emergency management, Mr. Lally.
Just sorry for these things. Pretty status quo. There we go. Pretty status quo in the department, just making internal improvements as we go, as time allows, submitting reports to the state as needed. And if anybody wants to come over and visit, feel free to come on over.
You weren't there Tuesday last week.
Where was I? I'll have to look at my calendar, see where I was.
Any questions for Kevin on anything that is in the makings or anything? How are we doing with the drone and everything, Kevin?
We're doing good. We've got, there's 3 pilots, including myself, for that piece. We've, again, repaired the one that had the hard landing, and so they're both available. We've actually had a missing young lady a few weeks ago over on the southeast corner of the county. Went down, but before we got in the air, they'd actually found her, so, which is a good thing.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Lally? Thanks, Kevin. Okay, probation, Stacy.
Good morning.
Morning.
We are continuing to move forward with that new data management system that I had mentioned well over a year ago. Right now, what we are working on is duplicate entries of clients. So sometimes a client gets entered a couple of times if there's a different date of birth, a different social security number. So right now we're going through the process of removing those duplicates and combining those all into one person. Another thing that is going on in my office that's pretty busy and keeping us very occupied right now is working on completing the grant application for a federal enhancement grant for our drug court. If we receive it, this would be the second enhancement grant that we would have received for our drug court. Sarah Leisner is the individual that is preparing the grant that we are working with. She is fabulous to work with. She's very detail oriented. And I know, again, this weekend, she was in working on that grant to compile it. So we're moving along very quickly on that. The deadline is April 11th, and we hope to have that completed and submitted well before that time. And then the last thing is, just as Amy had mentioned, we're waiting for that hearing to take place tomorrow to find out where we're at with that pretrial task force and the movement forward with that in the state. So we will continue to wait along with everybody else to see where we are at.
Hurry up and wait.
Yes.
I'm familiar with that. Okay, thanks. Anything else?
Any questions or anything that I could answer for anybody?
If I may,
Yes.
is there quite a bit of duplicates in that system?
You know, we started with a computer system back in 1995. So when I started, we were a little bit on pen and paper and quickly moved over to computers. So you can imagine as time has gone on, there's handwriting that gets a little difficult to read. So data entry kind of goes by the best that it can. I just started the process about 8 o'clock this morning when I came in. There's a number of them, but they're the same people. So we're all combining them, just making sure that we've got them all combined under the same person, the same data. And then we've got that same historical case note within that individual as well.
All right.
Okay, anything else for Stacy? Thank you, Stacy. Sheriff, you're up.
I had a goal to come and not ask for anything, so. Check the box.
Becky, take note.
You mean nothing, nobody can surprise you with anything unknown? You haven't walked back into something that,
Well, not yet anyway, but no, I
anybody have any questions?
feel like the
for
last few
sheriff?
times I've been here, I've been asking for something, so I made it a goal not to come and ask for anything.
I had a question for the sheriff.
Sure.
Is there any update on the Second Amendment case or cases that are ongoing?
As far as the lawsuit on the Safety Act, it's still proceeding in court.
Okay.
Yeah.
No update that you know of, no decision. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else for the sheriff? Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Okay, State's Attorney's Office. Stephanie, do you have anything you'd like to report? Mr. Boonstra was busy and could not be here, so Stephanie has been strapped with the responsibility.
Very happy to do so. So we just have the quarterly updates on the collection of unpaid fines. It looks like in January, total collections received after the fee paid out to the agency were $7,941.87. February, total collections received after the fee payout to the agency was $7,511.14. So we're up over just $15,453 on the year so far.
Okay,
That's
thank
where
you.
we are.
Becky, did you get all that?
Yep, $15,453.01 is what we've received through February 28th of this year.
Any questions for Stephanie from the State's Attorney's Office? Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Okay, report of abandoned property focus group.
Want me to take that, Mike?
But yeah. go
So the
ahead.
focus group has not met in this last month since our last committee meeting here. Although I will give you a quick update. The focus had been on 2500 West 4th Street. That was a mobile home that had been gutted and was unsafe. That mobile home was demolished earlier, actually last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So as of Wednesday, that unsafe condition was mitigated. There's one more step there. It's also got a well on it that needs to be filled and capped to make it safe. And then we'll be ready to, I'll be coming back to the board with the recommendation to sell the property. So other than that, I don't have an update on any of our other properties. The Special Prosecutor Tim Zollinger is working on the getting the authority on the 251 and 30 property. So that's moving through the legal system. And at this point in time, there's nothing else to report on that one.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on any of that? Okay, thanks again, Wendy. Okay. Anything under unfinished business that we need to talk about? Wendy, do you have anything?
Actually, I have a couple things, one of them being the handbook that's a little bit later on your agenda. So how about if I address both of those things when you get finished with everything else?
Okay, fine, thank you. I'd like to bring it to the committee's attention. I had received a request for a resolution to support House Bill 39, and briefly explaining what the purpose of the House Bill 39 is to repeal a provision that currently prohibits a person that is incarcerated in a penal institution from voting. As chair of the committee, I feel that it's my responsibility to take a look at some considerations, and I did do that. Number one is a request relevant to the responsibilities of this committee, the Public Safety Committee. Number two, is it relevant to the duties and responsibilities of the county board? Number three, will the requested action have any impact on the day-to-day operations of the county services? And number four, does the request provide sufficient information to allow board members to make an informed decision? This is a particular request that did not seem to check some of the boxes. It was not relevant to the Public Safety Committee or the full board and would have no impact on the day-to-day operations of county services. To make sure that I did my due diligence, I contacted Kelly Murray, who's the executive director of the Illinois Association of County Board Members, and had about a 45-minute discussion with Kelly. I also spoke to Mr. Boonstra from the state's attorney's office, and I've also discussed with our administrator, Wendy, on the situation. My discussion with Kelly from Springfield was that the House Bill 39 is a legislative move or decision as far as how the outcome is on that. I was also informed by her that it was a state issue more so than a county board issue. She further stated there's a potential risk weighing in on these types of issues that are not directly related to day-to-day operations for the county board. We could subject ourselves to potential liability. Mr. Boonstra basically confirmed my conversation with Kelly, and he also is of the opinion that it could have some liability issues and was more state related and legislative related than it is a county board responsibility. I didn't add it to the agenda for that specific purpose because of my opinion after I had talked with all three individuals. I would like to bring it before the committee as a matter of discussion, just to see what your thoughts are and go from there.
So to summarize, it would be to oppose legislation that's in committee now that says current prisoners will be able to vote. Is that a correct synopsis?
If the House bill passes, it would repeal at the House bill level, then it would go on to Senate for the next movement. But as it stands right now, it would mean that they would repeal the writing of not allowing the inmates to vote. Anybody that's incarcerated at a county level is still permissible to vote. It's just at the state level right now is what's controlling this. I don't feel that it's really the responsibility of the county board as a group to function or to take a position on the House Bill 39 when it's legislatively and state oriented right now. Anybody can oppose any of those bills by going to the specific webpage regarding that and express and vote there. And I did find out that the majority of the opposition to House Bill 39 right now stands at an individual opposition more so than any political group or entity that's out there that may have seen it. Being on as the legislative liaison for the county, last week we just went through a lot of the major Senate House bills that pertain to activities for the county board. And this particular bill has not come up yet. Kelly said that she would flag it so that it's followed to see that if it's going to, continue to move through the House and then on to the Senate. She did explain to me that the individual that sponsored this particular bill has enough potential behind them to get it to move from the House onto the Senate, but they question how far it'll go if and when it reaches the Senate. So it hasn't died, but I just don't feel that at this point, number one, that it was really, that we needed to consider it as far as public safety because it didn't pertain to us, nor did I feel that we should take the responsibility as a county board. Anybody that's on the county board or anybody in the public can oppose that bill by going to the site itself and choose to do so.
Sure.
And like I said, I would say 80–90% of the opposition right now is on an individual level.
So just a quick follow-up. So with the prison being where it is, do we know, would that directly impact the vote in our county? Should those prisoners be able to vote? I don't exactly know how many prisoners we have in that facility.
Oh, I just looked at numbers last night. I don't remember the numbers, and I'd hate to try to quote you a number and be wrong because I get pretty good at that sometimes. I'm sure that it would. But you also consider that those who are incarcerated at a county level, in a county facility, meaning the sheriff's corrections, they have the right to vote. It's the ones that are incarcerated at a state level, to my understanding. So would they have an impact? Very possible.
And of course, you'd have to consider, just like in the general public, of those individuals that are eligible to vote, how many really register to vote. So until we could give you the total number of people in the prison, but if it's anything like out here, what's the percentages? Only 30% even register to vote. So by the time you take that into consideration, I don't know if it would impact, a county election or some sort of an election like that. But again, total numbers in the prison isn't going to give us a good idea because you still have to register to vote and then you still have to exercise your right to vote. And by the time you get done, as Nancy Peterson can tell you, the number of people that actually do exercise that option in the end is a very small percentage of individuals that could vote should they register and choose to vote.
Well, thanks, Mike, for looking into that.
Thanks. I appreciate your interest and your concern. Okay. Anybody else, excuse me, have any questions on the? Yes, sir.
I don't have a question. I just feel at this point, due to the fact that this currently is in state legislation, that that's where it should stay at this point. For other purposes, let them push it through or whatever happens with it, then we can decide what we may want to do with it. But I think at this time, I think this is obviously a state legislation issue and it should stay there. And I don't think it should be a part of this committee at this time.
Anybody else? Mike,
I'd agree.
anything?
I agree with you guys.
I would have to say at this time, Kelly and Taylor, the attorney that works significantly beside Kelly on the House and Senate bills, pretty well takes note of whatever Senate bill or House bill could potentially affect or have an effect on the local counties. How they do it, I don't know, but they do a fantastic job. And there's a lot of time spent doing just this. House Bill 39 had not been brought to their attention yet. However, Kelly said that there has been movement, as I just stated. she has flagged it to continue monitoring that, and she will definitely make contact with either Wendy or myself or both of us. So it hasn't raised a concern as being one of the major bills yet. Could it? Very possibly. Wendy?
Sorry, I didn't mean to rush you. I was going on to the next topic.
No, that's all right.
Sorry. I
Okay.
did want to go through handbook, but I want to make sure that that conversation is tied off before I start.
Okay, no other questions. Go ahead, Wendy.
All righty. So my apologies for those of you who were in the room just about an hour ago when I went through this, but I'm going to go through it again because we do have some new faces in the room. Moving through the board agenda this month will be some changes to the handbook, employee handbook policy. Important to note that the employee handbook policy governs the non-union, the non-bargaining contract employees. To some extent, it may govern the bargaining contract employees if any one of these particular topics is not in the bargaining contract, then the default goes back to the employee handbook. But some of these items are actually in the bargaining contracts, and therefore they would have to be bargained for as part of that contract negotiation process. So right now, what we're talking about is the employee non-union. All right. So statutory changes, speaking of things that the state of Illinois does that do impact us here at this level, they did pass a couple of laws that I need to incorporate into the handbook, so I'll review them with you. Section 4-6 is sick leave to care for family members. So that codified statewide requirement that employers allow employees to take their sick leave to care for a sick family member. To be honest with you, I think that was the policy and practice of most of our department heads anyway. If you have a sick child and you need to take that day off to take care of that sick child, the department head granted that sick day to that employee to do that. So this is not anything different than what we've got in practice, but rather it's just clarifying and mirroring the language of the state law now, which expands that sick leave that we had to the employee's family. By the way, the sick leave is 12 sick or personal days per year. So it accrues at about 1 day per month that accrues. And they do get an opportunity to reserve some of that if it's not used. There's rules regarding that as well in the handbook, but I'm not suggesting any changes to that. Items 2 and 3 both deal with the Illinois Family Bereavement Act. So the Illinois Family Bereavement Act was a law passed by the state of Illinois that requires employers to grant an employee up to 10 days unpaid leave for a family, death of a family member, and the family member is defined in the statute. So just to remind everybody, right now, the employee handbook allows 3 days of paid leave for specific family members that would pass away. So the statute was very clear to say that an employee had the right to choose to substitute whatever the employer may offer, in this case, 3 days of paid leave for those up to 10 days of unpaid. So essentially, if an employee wanted to take 10 days off for bereavement leave for the very specific family members that are named in the law and in our handbook, they could do so, of which 3 of those days would be paid leave and the remainder 7 days would be unpaid leave. By the way, these are all proposals. I'm looking for your feedback on them. These are my recommendations, but you all have the right to not recommend any one of these or tweak any one of these. I want to make that clear. So the other recommendations, item number 4 on the cover sheet is the recommendation that I've made that we define full-time as 37 and a half hours to 40 hours. Now, that might seem really counterintuitive to a lot of you on the board side of things, but the practical matter is that I've been here for 37 years, and for 37 years, my hours were 8 to 4:30 with an hour for lunch. So I feel a responsibility to bring to the table here that we have something in our handbook that is not in practice. So what you choose to do about it is up to you. I did have a conversation with Stephanie prior to this meeting about this, and she would like a little more time to review this. She points out, and rightfully so, that oftentimes our state and federal laws are based on a 40-hour work week. And she is expressed a concern that perhaps if we go to 37 and a half hours, will that mess with the math of the 40-hour work week? Family Medical Leave Act or some other items that may be referencing a 40-hour work week. So she's going to do some research on that and get back to us if she has any concerns. And if she does have concerns, or if Charlie has any concerns, obviously I will retract my recommendation. I mostly wanted to make you aware of the fact that while we say we work 40 hours, the fact is that's not what's been in practical implementation for the entire time that I've worked for Lee County. And my take on that is it's never a good idea to put something in writing and then not follow what you put in writing, because that causes concerns too. So I'm bringing it to the table for discussion. Number 5, the Juneteenth holiday, which was adopted by the federal and then state government, that was approved by the board chairman for non-union employees last year. And so I'm just adding that to the list of paid holidays. Item number 6, section 4-5 of the handbook is paid personal and sick days. In our handbook, we required that if an employee was gone for more than 5 days, they had to come back with a doctor's certificate to say that they were certified and able to come back after a 5-day period. I am suggesting we change that to 3 days simply because it is consistent with the Family Medical Leave Act. So once again, trying to mirror the other federal and state laws that we have, it makes it a little easier to implement. Item number 7, section 4-6, health insurance start and termination dates. Again, for as long as I've been here, more than 36 years, the rule was when an employee comes on board, they have to be here 30 days to be eligible for health insurance, and then they come on board the following first of the month. So my example earlier today was the employee comes on board March 3rd. They have to be here for 30 days. To April 3rd. Now they're eligible for the insurance, but the insurance won't start until the first of the following month, which is April 1st. So theoretically, employees can go almost 2 months without having health insurance. And in today's competitive environment, trying to get employees to leave another job and come to work for us, that's a huge issue because people end up having to make decisions about whether they want to have a gap in their health insurance. In addition to that, I did talk to our health insurance provider, and the information she supplied to me is that starting an employee on the day they begin work, which is my recommendation, is in fact the industry standard these days. What we are doing is highly unusual. And again, in asking why did we ever do it that way, it was, if you can think about 35 years ago when we started this, we didn't have, emails and scans and whatnot. We were literally doing things on carbon copy paper. So the employee would sign up and then it would be mailed to the insurance provider. The insurance provider would maybe enter it into a database, I assume, but the process just took a lot longer than it takes today. Today, our employees, one employee in particular, logs into the insurance provider's portal and enters them in, and it takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So immediately they can be in the system. On the flip side of that, the termination date, and this again follows industry standard and our health insurance providers' guidelines, termination of insurance is going to occur on the last day the employee reports to work, or if they report to work after the 15th of the month, the coverage will terminate on the last day of the month. This is by our provider's standard, but I also agree with it because our employees who get paid biweekly, so essentially twice monthly, if it's after the 15th of the month, in all likelihood, they've paid out of their paycheck twice towards that month's worth of insurance. So they've paid for the insurance essentially. So the recommendation I'm making is that it will terminate, health insurance would terminate on the last day the employee reports to work, or if the termination is after the 15th of the month, then coverage will terminate on the last day of the month. Section 6-5, and by the way, when I get all said and done, if anybody has any comments you'd like to make or questions or suggestions, feedback, you can give it to me in between or you can give it to me at the end. Section 6-5 referred to personal cell phone use. And again, we had language that was really outdated in terms of what we do today. So we prohibited an employee from using their personal cell phone for anything county related. The fact is, many employees do use, myself included. Becky is one who communicates often with all of the board members. And highway department, or not highway, excuse me, health department, the IT department, the maintenance department, they have a cell phone with them, their own cell phone with them, and they use that a lot to communicate with each other throughout the day. So I changed the language to not prohibit it, but rather to allow it upon the department head's approval. And along with that is there are some employees, myself included, who I receive a monthly per diem for using my cell phone. The option here is we could still prohibit an employee from using their personal cell, but then issue them a county-issued phone. Well, that means the employee carries around 2 phones, and I can tell you it's going to cost us a lot more to have to issue phones to all the individuals who do now rely on those phones for county business. So my recommendation is to allow it again under the department head, with the department head approval, and to, in some situations, allow some reimbursement of the personal cell phone use. Caps out, according to my recommendation, at $50 per month, but it should be based on a prorated, how much do they use it? If they use it once or twice a year, probably not a good, not eligible for a reimbursement. Although again, I'm leaving this to the department head because they know how much they're expecting their employees to use their cell phones. And anybody that's out and about, like the health department that's out and about doing business, they're using their cell phones quite frequently, on a daily basis at least. So I'm making that recommendation. Item 9, section 6-7, business and travel expenses. The current version of the employee handbook allows for reimbursement with receipts or invoices up to a certain amount per day. I believe it to be $40 per day. But the handbook also prohibited somebody from being able to get reimbursed for breakfast if you leave after 7 p.m. or a.m., and dinner, if you get home before 7 p.m., you're not eligible. But it didn't break down that $40 a day eligibility by meal. So theoretically, an employee could buy a $40 lunch and turn in an expense because all we capped was the daily amount. We didn't cap or identify an amount for each meal. So all this is trying to do is to clarify that and identify a certain amount for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The rule about before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. and all of those other rules are still in place. We're just clarifying what the cap would be per meal. Item number 10, section 7-2, the handbook also prohibited employees from using their personal cells to take pictures or recording devices. Which I think is a good plan because we don't want employees, taking pictures or recording things inappropriately. However, once again, there are employees that will go out into the field and will use their cell phones, for county business, legitimate county business. So once again, I'm revising that language to read, if it's for legitimate business purposes and when approved by the department head, an employee could take a photograph or record a video of some sort of something upon approval of the department head. Last but not least, section 8-1, discipline and discharge. Right now, our discipline and discharge section allows a department head to discipline or discharge someone for the use of unlawful items, prescriptions, drugs, whatever, unlawful. But with marijuana now having some lawful use in the state of Illinois, I wanted to broaden that to allow the department head to discipline and discharge for lawful medications or substances if they come in with some sort of impairment because they've taken either a unlawful or lawful substance. I want the department head to have the authority to be able to discipline and or discharge. That is my recommendations. Following that document is a very lengthy document, and I put that in there with changes tracked. So any of the changes that I made are tracked in blue, so you can very quickly identify how I chose to phrase these various things. And with that said, I will throw it out to anybody that may have questions or comments or feedback on any of these items.
Wendy, a question I have, I know it's in the book, new handbook, but just for clarification, I understood it correctly. under the business and travel expenses for reimbursement for meals. Now, if one goes to a conference or meeting and a meal's provided, no, you can't bill the county.
That is correct. That is correct. If you go to a conference and the lunch is provided as part of the conference fee, the registration fee, then our rules, handbook rules right now will not allow reimbursement based on, if the employee chooses not to take that conference lunch and goes out to lunch, they're not supposed to be reimbursed for that lunch.
Thank you.
Wendy, when you went about this, did you go through the entire document then, and then these are the ones recommended?
I did. So I started while just thinking I needed to insert the law changes that came about. But then just as a due diligence, I read through the whole document, and these were the other things that I identified that I thought should be updated as well.
Thank you so much for doing that.
It was a fun process.
I'm sure.
I bet it was.
Anybody else have any questions on the?
Department heads that are sitting in the room, did you have any comments on what I'm proposing? But were there any other items that should have been addressed in the handbook revisions?
Hi. I want to say that thank you for doing that. It's very informative. We sometimes, once in a while, have to stay after court late or have an emergency hearing, and that just happened last week. So I did use my cell phone. I called Stacy. I think I called dispatch. I called Devin at the sheriff's department. So that does happen sometimes more often than not, but not every day, not every week, but we have to stay there and we have to follow things through. So it does happen. So that's all I want to
that's
say.
an example I didn't even think of, but yeah. I mean, and I think it's the way of the world with our cell phones. We're using them for more and more and more, and we need to acknowledge that there are legitimate business purposes that an employee might use their cell phone for. So prohibiting it was, as I read it, was insane to me. It's like, why would we want to do that? And again, I think the idea was we would just issue everybody county cell phones, but again, the cost of that would be cost prohibitive. And nobody wants to carry around two phones. Speaking for myself, I don't want to carry around two phones.
Okay, Stephanie, do we have anything for executive session?
Not that I've been provided with. I don't see anything that I have to.
Okay. If there's nothing else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Mr. Hudson moves. Second, Mike?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Pearson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Meeting's adjourned.